Trump tariffs are here, folks. 25% tariffs on goods, 10% tariffs on oil. Danielle Smith in the mud. We're in the ball game now, folks. I hear some people going, it's only 10% on oil and gas. It could be worse. Yeah, it could be. But most people don't realize that crude oil sales is actually a pretty low margin business. Really, you want to sell a lot more. It's a high volume business in that way, where you want to sell a lot more in order to kind of make up your profits. There's high drilling and extraction costs. There's price volatility due to wars, for example. And there's also really limited price control. So it's a low margin business. In the end, maybe you can make single digit profits, close to like 5%. You have to also consider that the value addition, the actual money making part of the crude oil business, takes place in American refineries. So it is the same reason why a person who makes canned fish probably nets a bigger profit than the guy that pulled the fish out of the water. It's kind of the same concept. It's a 10% tariff, but that could wipe out a significant portion of profits that Alberta would have gotten from oil. At that point, you might as well just be working for free. Eh? Also, Donald Trump could also be asking for a bigger discount on oil. Yeah, he is. He said so several times. He said he would continue to buy our oil and have a lower tariff on oil depending on the price. He has said several times, it depends on the price. So I said 2 days ago that I don't think that this is going to end well for Danielle Smith. This whole idea of siding with Trump won't end well for Danielle Smith. Now, Danielle Smith will probably say her efforts at lobbying people around President Trump is the reason oil only got 10% tariffs. It could be. I don't think it is, but it could be. It could have been 25%, but she only got 10%. Yeah, okay. Well, you've got to realize that we give them our heavy oil because they need it. I did a video about how the refineries are integrated and how important our heavy oil is to making value-added products in the US. But on this, Danielle Smith has shown the Trump team that she is willing to sell our oil at any cost. So yeah, they'll take the oil off your hands. Look, I have no beef with Alberta selling oil to the states. The federal government left them in this position. I've said that much, but where I draw the line is in Danielle Smith publicly undermining the federal response and potentially leaving other provinces with their pants down. Trump did not even try to divide us here. She gave him the way in. I told you how this could come around and make her look like an absolute mug when all is said and done. Anyways, let's talk about what Danielle Smith said today after the Trump tariffs were announced. I was really, really interested in what she would say after all the efforts she put into kind of trying to lobby the people around him. So she posted on X today. She says, "I am disappointed with U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to place tariffs on all Canadian goods. This decision will harm Canadians and Americans alike and strain the important relationship and alliance between our two nations. Alberta will do everything in its power to convince the U.S. President and Congress, as well as the American people, to reverse this mutually destructive policy." There's more there, but seriously, Danielle, I don't think you're getting the message here. They know it's destructive. They think they can cover their asses by collecting those tariffs and putting it back into their economy. They do not give a damn what happens to Canada. How can they make this any more clear to you? Anyways, let's continue. So she says, "We noted the 10% tariff for Canadian energy, which is partially a recognition of the advocacy undertaken by our government and industry to the U.S. administration, pointing out the substantial wealth created in the U.S. by American companies and tens of thousands of American workers that upgrade and refine approximately $100 billion of Canadian crude into $300 billion of product sold all over the world by those same U.S. companies." This is the canned fish and fisherman analogy again. If the U.S. makes significant profits off the cheap crude, we sell them. And I've said before, Danielle Smith going full rebel route shows we're willing to give them that oil at any cost. So let me give you another analogy. Maybe you like this one, right? I can't say the word in this video, otherwise the video will get taken down. But imagine you walk in and catch your wife having it off with a guy called Pancho, right? You walk in, you see them, and then you decide you're going to walk back out, maybe go in the kitchen and make them a mid-session snack. That's a dark analogy, really. That's a really dark analogy. The word I wanted to say and couldn't say, it rhymes with duck. Don't worry, you figure that one out. I believe in you. Anyways, what else did she say? She goes on to say, It is also worth noting that if oil and gas exports are excluded, the United States actually sells more to Canada than Canada sells to the US. Well, no shit, Sherlock. As I've stated to every American policymaker I've met with this past months, Canada buys more from the United States than any country on earth. More than the UK, more than France, Germany, Italy, and Vietnam combined. There is therefore no economic justification for tariffs imposed on any Canadian goods. Yeah, Danielle, they know. Like, they can do math too. They don't care. Like, how else do you want us to say this? Alberta will, she goes on to say, Alberta will continue our diplomatic efforts in the United States to persuade the U.S. president, lawmakers, administration officials, and the American people to lift all tariffs on Canadian goods as soon as possible and to repair our relationship with the United States. I encourage all premiers and federal officials to do the same, especially as the effects of those tariffs begin to take their toll south of the border. Americans need to understand the detrimental consequences of this policy decision. Yes, I agree with diplomacy, and we've been doing that. But Trump said there's literally nothing we could have done. He wants money from the tariffs, and he thinks tariffs will also help reshore manufacturing in the U.S. So, like, Trump wants to be China so bad? like you might as well start a little bit of communism in the U.S. I don't understand. Like, he wants to be China so bad? Anyways, let's proceed. Oh, this was the part that really got me. And you're gonna fall off your seats. She says Alberta will also work collaboratively with our federal government and fellow provinces on a proportionate response to the imposed U.S. tariffs through the strategic use of Canadian import tariffs on U.S. goods that are more easily purchased from Canada and non-U.S. suppliers. This will minimize costs to the Canadian consumers while creating maximum impact south of the border. All funds raised from such tariffs should go directly to benefit Canadians most harmed by the imposed U.S. tariffs. Okay, that's rich. Coming from Little Miss Kumbaya? Like, what is a proportionate response then? Like, you tell me. Like, just remember, Trump said there'd be bigger tariffs if we respond. Like, what now, Danielle? What now? Like, I thought we were just gonna keep flying off to Mar-a-Lago, kiss the ring, try and beg on hands and knees. Like, what happened to that strategy? It happened to work a lot, didn't it? You got 10% tariffs on oil. Literally, we sit there and we beg him. That's what we do. And go, please, sir, we're your best friends in the whole wide world. Don't do us dirty. Like, what is a proportionate response in the face of sweeping tariffs? Like, this could devastate some of the eastern provinces who have significant exposure to the U.S. markets. Ontario is in for a really rough ride here. Like, people will lose their businesses, they will lose their jobs, companies will look to move to the US, which is coincidentally what Trump wants. Here in BC, I think we're relatively lucky. We have access to alternatives if we possibly. But will Alberta be exempt from the consequences of all this? Maybe. The heavy oil that Alberta supplies is less easily replaced with friendly sources. I actually think it was weird for Trump to even put tariffs on oil at all. But I don't understand the man. At the same time, though, I feel like Trump has spoken a lot about the deficit with Canada, so he kind of boxed himself into a corner there. Like, if you really care about the deficit with Canada, and most of that deficit is because of oil, then you have to put tariffs on oil, right? But at the same time, you need Canadian oil. So I'm not really sure what the whole idea was there. I don't know what his end game was. I don't think anybody knows. So I actually think that one, the tariff on oil, would hurt Americans a lot more than it hurts Canada. Anyways, let's proceed. So Danielle Smith says Alberta will, however, continue to strenuously oppose any efforts to ban exports to the U.S. or to tax our own people and businesses on goods leaving Canada for the States. Such tactics would hurt Canadians far more than Americans. You know what? I can see why Albertans are so proud of her. She's right on that point. I can agree with that. There probably won't be retaliatory tariffs on oil. I think that will be the last resort if it happens, and I can agree with that. But I want to see import tariffs. I love that David Eby, the premier of BC, came out with a plan. Get American goods off government shelves, start looking into diversification of trade. So I want to know, what's your plan, Danielle? What's your plan, Danielle Smith? Fly off to Mar-a-Lago again? Like, anyways, she goes on to say, we also continue Alberta's call for the appointment of a border czar to coordinate the securing of our border against illegal migrants and drugs moving in both directions, and to achieve our nation's 2% GDP NATO commitment by 2027. These things should be done for the safety of all Canadians, regardless of our trade dispute with the United States. Okay, so this part ticks me off. Like, look, less than 1% of the fentanyl going to the US comes from Canada. Less than 1% of the illegal migrants come from Canada as well. So, if anything, we should be annoyed, we should be hurt that Donald Trump chose to put the same tariffs on Canada as what he put on Mexico. Like, think about this. He only put 10% tariffs on Chinese goods, and they are the big players in the fentanyl supply chain. They supply precursor chemicals for fentanyl. Even with all that, Canada has moved to increase security at the border. They've done or tried to do literally everything he asked. And in the end, what did President Trump say? He said there is literally nothing to be done. He just loves tariffs. It's the best word in the dictionary. Like, that's a gut punch. All that running around, all the attempts at cooperation, President Trump was negotiating in bad faith. He was negotiating in bad faith here. And so I agree with what David E.B. said. This must never happen again. We must never put ourselves in this position where an ally can do this sort of shit, right? We must never put ourselves in this position again. Plain and simple. You've got to deep that message, Danielle Smith. There was nothing they could have done. Anyways, here's the last part, and I've got to applaud Danielle Smith here. I know I've spent this whole time criticizing her, but I will say this. She is not a sellout. She's just a person looking out for her province. Now, I don't like that she so publicly abandoned the rest of the country. Like, you've got to know, these are the people that will stand with you. The rest of this country, these are the people that will stand with you next time there's a wildfire. Or if the U.S. chooses to go full confusing in their attack policy for some reason, like attacking their biggest ally. Anyways, here she says, despite the disappointment of today's decision, there is also an incredible opportunity before us as a nation. Canada can and must now come together in an unprecedented effort to preserve the livelihoods and futures of our people and expand our political and trade relationships across the globe. Like, come together? That's rich coming from her, right? Anyways, I said I wasn't going to criticize her anymore, but she says, we can no longer afford to be heavily reliant on one primary customer. We must stop limiting our prosperity and inflicting economic wounds on ourselves. Completely agree. Rather, we must unleash the true potential of our country, which possesses more wealth and natural resources than any other nation on earth. To this end, Alberta calls on the federal government and our fellow provinces to immediately commence a national effort to fast-track and build oil and gas pipelines to the east and west coasts of Canada, construct multiple LNG terminals on each coast, increase internal refining capacity, unleash the development of critical minerals, lower taxes, reduce red tape, tear down interprovincial trade barriers, and re-empower provinces to develop our unique economies without constant federal interference and imposition of anti-resource development laws. I feel like I just read the conservative manifesto right there. Anyways, our province and our nation can overcome the formidable economic challenges ahead, but we can only do so if we start acting like a healthy and functional country. Well, no shit. A healthy and functional country, you don't go running off. Anyways, we can only do so if we start acting like a healthy and functional country that supports every province to export their best resources and products to world markets, thereby achieving their unique potential. But by so doing, Canada can become one of the most prosperous and powerful nations on earth. Alberta stands ready to do our part if this true Team Canada approach is taken. Well, at least she's joining the team now. Better late than never, I guess. Anyways, before I go, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said tonight that we're putting 25% tariffs on $30 billion worth of goods starting Tuesday. Let's go. All right. It will be on everyday items like beer and wine and bourbon. And that could rise even more in the next 21 days. And I'm talking about the volume. The tariffs will still be 25%. You guys know me by now. I don't play. Like, I've got tons of video in the chamber for you guys. So subscribe down below and join the conversation. Let me know what you think about these things. I'll see you next time. Take care, guys.